All right, so we're hooked up to the $1,500 2010 Land Rover LR4 because we got a timing code. So let's take a look and see if it's still there. Strange thing is, this doesn't make any noises. The timing check engine light comes on, you get a timing correlation code. Randomly, you'll drive a week or two, would not have any problems. And other times, it'll be on the whole day. No noises, but yeah. Alright, so here we got cylinder 8 misfire detected. Misfire detected on startup. Crankshaft position sensor, camshaft position correlation, bank 1 and bank 2. And park neutral switch, input circuit. So these are the ones I'm worried about, is the correlation codes. So that's why we're going to pull in the shop and do a timing job on it. So, all right. So we are pulling in our 2010 $1,500 LR4 because we got some timing codes that popped up. So we're pulling it in the shop so we can get started on it in the morning. All right, so it's a nice early morning start. Sun just came up over the mountains. We're going to get started on the timing job for our 2010 Land Rover LR5. This is the one we picked up for $1,500 and had to swap the transmission control module. So got correlation codes that pop up for both left and right banks, and doesn't make any noise. It doesn't happen every time you run it. It's probably been a month since the check engine light came on, just some local driving. But as you know, there is a timing issue on these 5 liters, so we are going to tear into it. I have my car set up here. Haven't started yet. I got the online manual. I'll go through that, and when needed, I'll reference that for you guys. I got my special tools: fuel injector removal tool, our crank holding tool, pulley, dampener puller, and timing equipment. So should have everything we need to get ready on this. I'm going to be pulling the radiator, so we'll be doing a cooling system drain. We're changing the thermostat. We'll check for any other issues and go from there. I'm going to pull the grill off so I don't risk the damage in it, but I should be able to pull the radiator without pulling the front end, but we'll try and see. All right, so obvious first thing, pull the engine cover. Just lift up on the front, slide it back. So next thing we're gonna do, get our number 7 nut driver. We're gonna take off, loosen this one, that one, disconnect our mass airflow sensors. And also, there's a clip right here. I'll try to get my light on so you guys can see it. And we'll disconnect that, lift it up, and then disconnect the PCV hose here. All right, so here's that clip I was telling you about. That goes over this little cheesy plastic cooling line. Runs from throttle body over to your reservoir tank through this Y. This, on this one, wasn't even clipped in, but you'll want to make sure and unclip it before you lift this up, because it'll break that. Ask me how I learned. And then this is the other one. This is your PCV hose. It connects right to here. You just, if you look on here, there's some little grooves right there where you put your fingers and you squeeze it like that and just work it loose. She slides right off. This time I'm going to remove the grill. So you're just going to carefully push down on these little tabs. It'll release, you'll feel it, and the front's loose. So then you come down here, the lowest part, and just pull back. Do that on both sides, and she'll remove. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do, move the air boxes. You're gonna see for the mass airflow connection, You're going to have little keepers, your Christmas trees. You're going to want to remove that one. And then there's one back here. And on this one, you have one here and here. So you move those. And on the driver's side, you'll want to slide your power steering reservoir up out of that bracket. So just let it sit there. And then you're just going to be able to pull that up. And they both pop out. I'll show you what the rubber feet sit into. Okay, so like I said, reservoir brackets here for the power steering. Just set off to the side. You lift up. All I do is grab this part and pull up, and it pops this foot and this foot out of those bushings, and then it comes right out. Same on this side. You got 2 feet. She pulls right up, and that's that. So we'll set these air boxes off to the side, and then we'll remove our battery. All right, for this battery, you obviously disconnect your negative, your positive. There's a little vent here. Just kind of pull it carefully out, move it out of the way. Because we're taking this whole battery box out, you'll notice this is kind of tough to get in and out. What I do, since this is coming off anyways, is I release, there's 4 of these little clips. One about right here, and then one in the back. And that allows you to lift this up. And when you lift that out, it's easier just to pull the battery this way. So I'm gonna go ahead, take this out, 2 number 8s to take the battery hold down clamp out, and then just get your trim tool and pop this connector off this plastic piece. This will come out, and then we can slide the battery out easier. So, all right. Okay, so now that we got the battery out of here, there was this little piece here, slides right underneath, right on that channel. Just go ahead and pull that out. That basically closes this gap off here. There's the back of that electrical connector I was telling you about. What I ended up doing, just because you can see it's rectangle, just turn it to where it slides right out, real easy. Then you'll disconnect. This sits right here. Get your trim tool out, pop that Christmas tree out. That gets that out of the way. Then you have 3 number 13 nuts to take off right here. Let me get a magnet real quick. So you'll take this one out, and then back here, there's 3. And what that allows is this should lift up, just this half. You see how it splits? So we work it up, get it to where it's unlodged. And then the next thing you got to do is just kind of wiggle it until this edge comes over here. You just move it this way, and then that allows you to pick it up. So it's a little finagling, just like that, and you lift it straight up. All right, so now that we cleared off the space over there by the battery side, passenger side, we're gonna do the same thing to here. So you just carefully, remember this plastic's brittle, pull back on it, lift up a little bit. This one's already broken. Then you just kind of carefully slide it out. So on this, there's these little tabs, it's just like the other side. You'll lift up here, lift up here. There's one right here. And then there's one right here, which is kind of tough for me to get my fingers to. So I take a screwdriver, come into the side, lift up, and that just pops out. And then this piece, you'll just pull back and up, and it comes out. So next thing we're gonna do is take these 2 screws out. They're number 8s. And then I'll get a zip tie and zip tie this up back out of the way. But before I do that, we'll get a number 13 and take out this one, and the one in the back. What I'm also doing is putting my bolts back in where I take them out, so you know where they go and you don't lose them. Okay, so like I said, what I found was it was a little tight, so I used my trim tool and popped this clip for the wiring harness right out of there. And that allows this to sit nicely right here. And I'll take my zip tie, feed it around one of the brake lines. And this is just to hold it up here. Otherwise, what you'll find is this just keeps falling down and getting in your way. And that's it. So then we'll take our number 13 socket, take this off. And then one more in the back. Okay. And then we'll get my magnet. Okay, so the same thing. I'll put these nuts back on the fender well once I pull this off. Same thing though, you lift it up and pull it over. Just like that. It's usually the back side that's kind of tricky. You kind of lift it up, get it over here, without it getting caught back there. And then that's up. So we'll go ahead and put our nuts back on here so we don't lose them and we know where they go. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is pull these little insulators they have on both sides. So, our 2011 was actually missing the one on the driver's side. So you pull your oil fill cap off, keep stuff from falling in there, kind of pop these out, and then carefully get it lifted up out of there. You just see kind of just stuff this, and this is what seats down in there, and everything else just sits there. So that's it. We'll do the same thing to the other side, and then we'll start pulling out the coil. So before we remove the passenger side, we're going to need to disconnect this vacuum line. There's one here, and then there's also one here. We can get this out of the way while we're here. You can see there's little squares. You just pinch that, should pull apart. And that one will sit like that, and then it's attached to this one as well. We'll go down here, same kind of connection. Just squeeze it, pull it apart, and then up here, it tucks up into this little trim piece. So you just kind of push down with it. So it's like that, and then I carefully just set it up out of the way. Just like that. That way it doesn't get damaged. This one will stay here, but it just sits like that. And then we can pull this one out. So we'll go ahead and get this out of here. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is the coils. Obviously you got 4 on each side. But these have little locks. You can see this little gray piece right here. What I find, taking my body trim tool, is just put it in there and just unlock it like that. So I'll go through and unlock them all. That one doesn't want to unlock. There we go. And obviously this one in the back is a little trickier. Sometimes if this doesn't work, I can use a pick. Okay, so then once you have that, you're going to want to just push on that, where that gray tab is, push down, and this should pull right out, just like that. So we'll do that to each one of these. That'll disconnect our coils, and then we'll take our Torx bit, which I believe is a Torx 30, but we'll get to that, and then we'll pull out each coil. Just this one bolt is what holds each one in. All right, next we're going to finish pulling out the coils. Again, a T30. We'll remove this. And then with it disconnected, it's going to be tight. You just try to pull straight back with it, and it'll pop out, and there's your coil removed. So on this, you'll do this to each side on this one. I'll go ahead, won't bore you with that. I'll get these all removed, and then I'll show you there's a little bit of difference on the passenger side just to get to the screw. But I'll show you that here in a minute. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is move this shroud out just to get out of the way, and then we're going to want to disconnect all our connections on the front with where this wiring harness goes on both sides, because that we're going to want to move those back out of the way when we go to pull the valve covers off. So you're just going to unclip your hose over here. You got your fan connector right here. Pop that up, and then this one's not even seated in. We got one more fan connector terminal here. Pop that out. That gets that out of the way. And then if you reach up underneath, there's a little I'll show it to you when I pull it out. You'll kind of pinch it and it'll pull up. And then you're just kind of lifting this up carefully. This is what I was saying. You just kind of pinch that. That's what locks it in. Okay, so like I said, on the passenger side, pretty much the steps are the same, except you're going to need to get this little electrical conduit out of your way. And all you're doing is pushing down with the little tabs. You see them right here. And you got to lift it, pull it back. The reason why you got to just pull this back enough is because the screw is right up underneath on these. So we're going to try to get to the screw in the back side. So I'll go ahead. You have this one, and this one. And then it'll, as you loosen one, you'll go to the next one, it'll kind of shimmy itself off. Should anyways. This one seems like it's stuck in there pretty good. There we go. Just had to give it a little persuasion. See how it's coming up. So once you get that, now you can get to your screws and disconnect all your terminals here. There's a ground wire as well. It uses a number 8. You'll take that off, and then that way we can move this out of our way. That'll make it easier to get to the coil screws, and it's got to be out of the way anyways to get the valve cover off. So, all right. Okay, so here on the passenger side, you can see this is the number 8 I was telling you about for the grounding screw, or grounding wire. So you just break that loose, and we'll pull that out. Put the bolt back in so you know where it goes, and then allow us to pull this out. So like I said, to get this harness out of the way so you can get your coils out, you're going to disconnect everything on your front of your passenger side cylinder head. And then you already had your coil connectors disconnected, but because this is so short, so tight fit, you have to disconnect your injectors as well. And to do that, this one sits like that in the top of the injector, and you'll push from the bottom, and it releases that clip. You can see that. So then you push that and pull back. And then you do that as you go, you pull the front one, work your way backwards to the rear of the block, and then you'll be able to lift it up. And now we can get our coils out. So we'll get our coils out, and that'll be as far as we can go on the valve covers for the time being. Then we'll pull our fuel line here. We'll take then we got to disassemble our front of the motor for the fan, thermostat housing, so we can get to the connectors on the driver's side cylinder head. All right, so what we're going to do next is we're going to have to drain the coolant, but while we're draining the coolant, I'm going to use my air compressor, and we're going to blast all around the injectors, spark plug holes, all that area. We'll even do on top of the engine, just to get any debris, sand, dirt, as much as we can get blasted off this engine. So once we open it up by pulling the valve covers and pulling the injectors out, it's not going to fall inside the engine and do any damage. So that's what we're going to do now. Okay, what we did is we moved the skid plates underneath the engine and radiator area. I take the back one off first. You're going to have 2 long bolts in the very back with spacers. And then work your way forward. These here are going to have a nut on the back side. It's number 15. The bolts are all number 13, but these 2 nuts across from each other are number 15. Then you'll take these last two number 13 bolts out, and then this thing comes out, and then this is left in there, and then you just have 2 number 10 bolts to take off this skid plate, and that's it. So we're going to put it back down on the ground and start taking hoses off with the drain pan underneath to collect the antifreeze. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this hose off and this hose. So this is all one piece. It goes across to the reservoir tank and then up to where the throttle body is. So first we'll take these clamps off. For this piece, it's just got a locking ring, so you just kind of pull it back carefully without breaking it. Like I said, you can just see it's just a half circle, and then you just kind of work it up. It's got an O-ring seal, and that's it. And then same with this, twist it to break the connection, twist it. These little nipples on the radiators are easy to break, so just keep that in mind. And then that's that piece here. So that's out of the way. We'll go ahead and disconnect this one and let it drain into the pan for a bit. Then we'll remove the fan. Okay. So what we're doing, we disconnected the upper radiator hose from the radiator, let it drain. Now we're going to take it off of this plastic crossover tube that connects to the thermostat. And that gets this hose. Alright, so we're getting ready to pull the fan off. This is our custom made wrench. We just grinded it down to fit, but if you don't have something to grind down, they sell some pretty slick little fan removal tools. So maybe someday I'll pick one up. This is what we're going to use for this. Supercharged engines, they rotate the fan to loosen it would be lefty-loosey. On this one, it's non-supercharged, so it's naturally aspirated. It'll be right rotation, right-handed thread to take it off. So put my wrench on there, get a couple good hits. Just use a good hammer and hit it, and should break loose. There we go. So we'll just spin this off and take the fan off. You'll need to unplug the connector right here. I'll show it to you. Right here, you kind of slide it up, pinch your terminals, and pull it apart. And this piece will come up with your fan. All right, so we're just taking it off. Once it comes off, you'll catch it, and you'll lift it up with your connector carefully, and then the fan's out. Just pull the shroud out. There's little clips on both sides, you'll see right here. You just pull back, lift up. Same thing on that side, it should pull right up. Okay, this hose here, there's about 3 or 4 keeper pins. You'll have to use your body panel tool and pop those loose real quick. And it's a slide right up. You can see the holes where she connects to. All right. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is remove our thermostat housing. That way it gets it out of the way. We can take the rest of the front of the parts off, and also able to get the electrical connections here. So to take this off, you need to take this hose clamp off or this one. This is what goes to the water pumps right back here. So you need to disconnect it from the water pump, and then we need to take this hose clamp off, then this lower one here, and this electrical connector down here, right there. That's temperature sensor, and then right here on the radiator, there's a connection. And basically, it's the big fat connection. It's your lower radiator hose. So you'll take it off of the radiator, and then there's a T30 screw over here. You come around. You'll take this off. I do this one first. Just take that one screw off right here.
I'll probably get it. Oh, there you go.
Right here, there's that one T30. We'll take that screw off. That's what holds the thermostat housing to the engine. So to take that off, then you can start taking things off. Just follow your electrical leads. Like I said, take your hoses off. They're going to be tight, but it will come off. Okay, so this is what I remove when I remove the thermostat housing. We'll be replacing the thermostat with a new housing, but just so you get an idea. So we'll probably end up taking this off, taking this hose off, putting it on the new thermostat housing. But I find it easier to do this and than trying to fight all the other ones. This one you're going to take off anyways because we'll be pulling the radiator. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to pull, this is a stretch belt. There's no tensioner on it. So we're going to pull the 3 bolts out here, slide the pulley off with the belt, and that'll remove this. And then we're going to do the power steering pulley. We're going to break the bolts loose on the power steering pulley while the belt is on tension. There's just number 10 bolts for both pulleys. And then I'd put some penetrating oil or something right here because that pulley has to come off the shaft. So if you get it I'll spray some WD-40, get it to start breaking down. But that'll be a kind of a tricky one to get off. So that's what I'm going to do now is break these bolts loose, spray it with WD-40, take these bolts, take the stretch belt off, and then we'll start disassembling our tension. I think somebody's had this apart because these bolts aren't very tight, and the fan nut bolts had quite a bit of, like somebody had beat on it with an impact chisel. So we'll go ahead and get these pulled off and then get this off, see what we got behind it. They may have replaced the water pump at some time. Okay, so we got our 3 bolts off for this fan pulley. Should just be able to slide it forward. And that's it. That's instead of using a tool to take the belt off. We will need a stretch belt tool to put the belt back on. So I'll show you how to do that when we get to that point. So next thing I'm gonna do, you probably don't need to, but this just gets in my way, scratches my arms and stuff. So it's a number 13 bolt. Take that little brace off for the upper power steering or the upper radiator hose. Get that out of the way. And then we'll start taking apart our pulley system. All right, next thing we're gonna do is loosen our belt off. So I got my 3/8 drive ratchet, and we're gonna loosen the tension off by pushing on it that way. Once we pull that off, we'll just pop it off with like this pulley down here. Makes it loose. That way we can pull this hub assembly off. This belt actually wraps around a pulley on the back side of this. And I'll show you that once I get it off. So you don't want to take this off without taking that tension off. So okay, so we pulled the fan hub off. And this is the pulley I was telling you about on the back side. You can't really see it unless you're looking from the bottom, but that belt runs right around there. So that's why you want to make sure to relieve the tension before you pull this off. And there's 4 bolts that hold this on, number 15. I got the bracket off. I'll take this time here just to make sure I highly recommend you put your bolts back in where you take them off. There's a lot of bolts that look similar, different lengths slightly. So as we remove them, put them back where you got, take them out whenever possible. Otherwise, try to label them because there's a lot of bolts here to keep track of. So, all right, we're going to continue. The next thing I'm going to do is take the serpentine belt tensioner off. That'll allow me to get the belt out of the way. And then I think we can maybe see about taking the power steering pulley off. And then we'll disconnect all the connections on the front of this. So we got the tensioner off. It's just 1 bolt that holds the tensioner off. It's right here. It's a number 15. Take that off, and then you have to take that tensioner off because the belt goes behind it. And then that'll slide off. And next thing we're going to do is, let's see. Oh, the coolant reservoir tank probably doesn't need to be taken out, but I like just to get stuff that's easy to get out of my way. In case I lean on something, I don't want to break it. It's just 2 number 8s right there at that foot, and then it clips in back here. So we'll unclip it from there, and then there's 1 electrical connection down on the bottom. It's got a metal thing. You just push that metal wire, I'll show it to you once I pull it out, in, and then pull the, it's basically your low coolant light that shows up on your instrument panel. So we'll pull that off, and then we'll move on and see if we can get that power steering pulley off. Okay, so like I said, those 2 number 8 bolts. This little windshield washer neck snaps right in there, no screws needed. This is the foot that I was telling you about. Just slide it up off of that little bushing there. This is what people break a lot of times, because they don't realize it's back there. And then your electrical connectors down here. You can see this is the metal tab I was telling you about. You just push that in and pull back, and your reservoir tank will come out. We'll rinse this out real good, as we'll be putting clean coolant into the engine when we're done. All right, so got everything disconnected here. Got the ground wire disconnected. In addition, on the driver's side, you have to disconnect on your throttle body. Connect that, and then you'll disconnect this one here as well. So, and then we'll be able to pull it up off of here, and then again, push these tabs all the way back. Allows you to lift it up. I also disconnect this piece here so we can get this out of the way. So what I did was I disconnected the vacuum, or the PCV line that goes from here to the back of the valve cover. On this one up here, you just push down. See if I can get it over here. It sits like, let's see, this is the one that goes to the intake manifold. So this one you already had disconnected. This one goes to the back right there, and you just squeeze these two sides together like that and work it out. Just be careful, it's brittle. So you get that one out, and then there's this one. This one here makes this little loop-de-doo, and this end connects right there on the front, just behind your throttle body. And there's only one button to push, and it's on the top. Push that in, pull it out. It allows you to get this more flexible. You'll unclip it from the top of the wiring harness, and then what I do is I unclipped all my connections here. I lift it up and I kind of push this whole harness back and then get it up over top of that pipe coming out of the valve cover. This allows it a little bit more room to get to the bolts, which are the toughest bolts for the valve cover back there. So something to keep in mind. So this is loose, that's loose. Next thing we're going to do is disconnect our crossover fuel line. There's two fuel lines coming up here. So this comes from your high pressure fuel pumps that are driven down on the lower part of the engine. Two of them come up, provide fuel. This one goes to the fuel rail on the passenger side. This one goes across here. So we'll take this piece off. Be careful. The book says to pull the fuel pump fuse out before you start all this. Start the engine, let it run until it dies. That uses up the fuel in the system because it could be pressurized. So keep that in mind. And even still, make sure, be careful. I think this is a number 17 to break these loose. Take this crossover tube off first, from right here and right here. And then we'll have to take a number 8 from here, and probably this one and this one and this one. We'll take that off, pull that back out of the way, and we'll be ready to take the fuel rails off. Okay, so the next thing I did was disconnect. After I got this crossover line, again, put the screws back, got the crossover line disconnected, I went ahead and took this PVC line off the intake and off the back of the valve cover back here. So that gets that out of the way. And now I'll take this connection here off. That way we'll be ready to pull the fuel rails. All right, now we're ready to pull the fuel rails. So we'll go ahead and remove the 4 number 10s right here. There's 4 on each side. Pull those off, and depending on your vehicle, fuel rails may come off easy, may come off with the injectors, or may just be a lot of prying. We'll see how this one goes, and I'll try to tell you what I do. When I did the last one I did, I broke the front loose, and then I was able to, with using prying methods, and then was able to lift by working the front up and down and pulling back on the back. It freed itself off. Injectors stayed in. Injectors were tough to get out. So we'll see how this one goes. It's got 122,000 miles on it, so it could go either way. All right, so we just got the fuel rails out. As you can see, the driver's side actually came out with 1 injector. I was kind of surprised. Usually you don't see that. You can see some of the upper O-rings are stuck in, or stayed inside the rails. Something to keep in mind, again, this is the driver's side. This is your passenger side. There's going to be a pressure sensor on the back. If you don't disconnect it right here, just follow the pigtail, and it's just a easy little release right here. And disconnect that as you're pulling it out. So, but yeah, I guess that'd be your number 2, because the evens are on the, this goes 2, 4, 6, 8 on the driver's side. So we got 3 more. I'll probably start on this side. Start pulling the injectors out now. Kind of see. So what I do is I stick a pry bar, screwdriver on both sides. Like I come in from the top on this side and then from the bottom on here, and just start working it gently back and forth. You will have to pry quite a bit, but just work it back and forth, and then it'll release. And then once you get the front release, you just reach back there with one hand, pull up, and work it back and forth, and then it'll come off. Same thing on the driver's or the passenger side. This one's actually seemed easier because I can get my hand in here nice and easy, put my fingers under there and lift as this is working back and forth. And it's easy to get a pry bar down in there too. So, all right, Let's see if those injectors come out. Okay, these injectors are coming out really easy. 3 to 4 strikes. You can see right here. No damage to any of them, no bending, no cracking. So I got one left. So I'm going to try to show you how it sits down on there. So if you can see, the top of my tool is flush with the top of the electrical connector. What I'm talking about is right here. So that way you know you're seated all the way down. Because there's 2 lips, the smaller lip, and then you're just going to slide right off of it. The other thing you want to do, let me get my light lit back up, is this little pin here. You want it all the way up into there. If it's slid down at all, you won't get a good bite. So keep it pushed up all the way up in there, and have it flush right here or pretty close to it, and then just hammer away. And this tool works really good. This one I haven't had any issues as long as I made sure I was seated all the way down, and that locking ring is all the way down as well. So those are the things. So then you just use the slide hammer. I put one hand here, pull with pressure back, and then just hit it, and she pops loose. All right, we got the last injector out, so I'm going to use that opportunity to show you guys what I was talking about. So you can see how, let's see, this is pretty close to being at the same height. That way you know you're low enough down there. There's a slot in the tool, if you look closely, has to go around that little, you're going around this piece right here on the injector with that tool. So it's got to go on like this, okay? And then this is the pin I was telling you about. It'll feel like it's locked in, but the pin may only be sitting like that. It will not hold tight enough, and you'll probably do some damage to the tool or maybe the injector. So it needs to be all the way down like that, okay? Again, it's trying to wrap around this piece here. Sorry. It's trying to wrap around this one right here, the lower shiny spot. But if you don't have it all the way down, it may hook around here, especially if the O-rings have come off. It'll hook around this little lip, and it won't pull out. So just something to keep in mind. Otherwise, that tool works good. There's an idea what it looks like. So, all right. So next, now we got the injectors out. We start pulling the valve covers off. I got new valve cover gaskets, but you got bolts down the inside here. You got them along the top and the bottom, and then 3 on your front cover. The 2 in the back are the hardest. These on the passenger side aren't as bad as the ones on the driver's side, which you can kind of see. Well, you can't. Try to get a light, but it's right. There's this little fender well right here, or firewall that gets in the way. So what I end up using for a lot of these, it's tough. The easy ones I get to, I just zip them out with my 3/8 drill, and number 10. All the other hard ones to get to, I use a 1/4-inch drive swivel ratchet, like this one here. And I use a combination of a shallow socket right there and a deep socket. Because sometimes a shallow socket with a short extension is too long. So using the deep socket alone gives you enough height to clear the valve cover. So that's how I do the back. Any of them that I can't get a wrench on easy, I'll use my 1/4-inch ratchet. All right, I'm gonna start taking them off, and then we'll get back on the front cover. All right, we finally got the valve covers off. It's probably your next hardest challenge after you get the injectors out, fuel rail, just because of those back bolts. What I ended up actually doing is using a universal joint. This time around, like this, shallow socket, number 10. These are the 2 that are hard to. This is on the driver's side valve cover, so you can see it is a pain, but it comes off. We got new gaskets, but overall, looking at this, looks like it's been maintained well. Don't see a lot of wear on the camshafts. I don't see any varnish, so it means it's got good oil changes. So that's a good sign. We do have some looseness in the chain. It's not terrible, but I guess it's enough to trigger the code. Once we put it at safe mode, we got to turn this crank around to where everything's in safe mode, we might find more play in the chain, so we'll see. So right now what we're going to do is work on getting this radiator out. Okay, so now we're going to take the radiator out. First we'll take these 2 bolts down here. There's a 13. There's supposed to be 2 13s, but somebody's been into this. I got a number 12 on passenger side, number 13 on the driver's. So part. And I gotta switch this on 13. Okay. Grab our magnets. That's what it's supposed to look like. Let's see what this one is. And that's what's in there.
Let me get it to focus.
So that's the wrong one. That's the right one. It is holding it in. It is the right threads, just different heads. So if somebody's been into your car, you might find that too. Okay, so what we're going to do, this lower hose connected to the radiator, it comes from the transmission cooler. So to take it off, you'll get a pick. I just use a 90-degree pick, and there'll be this little metal clip, and you'll pull it towards the center of the car. Sometimes you just pull it, and it just not to the first notch, and it disengages it. So if it comes all the way out, it's not a big deal. Just so you don't lose it, you'll need it. So we pull that out, and that'll let us disconnect that hose. And then the next thing we want to do is these here. So if you look down in here, there's a little pin right there. You got to push that in. See if we can do that. And it just pulls up. So that's the detent you're pushing in. So we'll do that to the other side, and then we'll finish taking that hose off. And then we have a few things that I'll show you on the side for the number 8 screws. Okay, so you'll have 2 screws like this, one on each side. One goes in here, and then one on the other side directly across from it. And then you'll have this screw here. These are both number 8. You'll take this one, will actually go, basically the side of the radiator bolts the refrigerant, the cooling lines going to the condenser. So that you'll remove this, 2 of these, 1 of these, and then we'll move to the front, and we'll remove this one to number 8. We're going to pop, this is your power steering cooler. You're going to pop this loose by pushing it this way, and it'll disengage the little brackets on this side. They're just plastic clips. You got to be careful because they'll be brittle. But you can see right here, it'll pop it out. And then that will move the condenser or the power steering cooler out. Actually, the power steering cooler lines are down here. These are the clips that you'll be taking out. So we'll pop those loose. And then there'll be another one. We got to take this little deflector off here. There's a number 8 screw behind it. And then we should be able to get to the last number 8 screw through the cowling. We'll show you that when we get there. Okay, next thing we're going to be doing is taking this piece off. You'll have these little push pins. The center comes out. You'll take one off up here and then one off right here. And then you'll use your body panel tool and separate it right here where it goes into the condenser. And that should allow us to remove this. Or at least lift it up out of the way, because that's all we need to do so we can get to that screw. Okay, so that's the number 8. So we'll take that screw off, and we'll go ahead and take that screw off, and then I'll show you where the last screw we got to take off is. Okay, so we got that screw out. We got that screw out. Now, okay, so right there is the screw that you got to take out. That should be the last one. In reference, license plates here. Got a little cowl down in there. And I just use a nice long extension, number 8 bit. Okay. Okay, so now we got the screws off of the radiator. You got to take this plastic nut off. It's just a number 10 plastic nut till this comes up. Then you go down over here on the inside of the frame rail, you'll see this little clip. Pop this clip out. All that does is allow us to move this forward. We need to be able to move that forward because that radiator needs that space. So that'll get moved forward, and then your vacuum line here, we'll want to disengage it. You get a screwdriver. And then it just undoes, comes out of a keeper there. And these basically get moved up as far as we can that way. So we have as much room as possible because this radiator needs to come up and swing forward, and then we pivot it out. So we're just about ready to pull this out. Okay, so there's a little air deflector, something, diffuser that kind of holds the top edges together on the condenser and the radiator. And to remove that, you just got these little pinch ones. So you just kind of push them in, slides back, push it in, and that slides back. You should be able to pull this all the way off, and then that is probably going to, most likely will stay with the condenser, and then that frees that up. And then what we're also going to do, we decided we're just going to take this vacuum line off. So you'll notice a little red spot. You'll push down on that and just slide it back, and that gets that out of the way. So that way we don't damage it. It's for your brake booster. Oh, so then we went ahead and disconnected the power steering cooler, like I was showing you, right here. Fits in these little channels. And then also on the edge here, if somebody hasn't broken it off, there's clips that this end ties into. So if you have that loose, you're good to go. And then we'll see what else we got to do to take this radiator out. Okay, so we were actually, there it is, come right there. So, right, see if I can get my finger. So if you're looking right there, another screw, number 8. Our 2011 didn't have this screw in there, so I don't know if it was just missing or they changed something. So we'll compare it with the 2012 and see. But yeah, this was one screw that we had left. So there's 4 screws you have to get from the front to disconnect the condenser from the radiator. So that's, we're going to get that one out, and we should be able to pull this out. Okay, so sorry we didn't get a video of actually pulling it out. I needed Kaya with a light there so I can make sure I don't break anything. But I'm just going to point out some of the things right here. This is where your power steering cooler clips into. So you want to just push it that way. It just snaps right out. You want to do that before you try taking it out, otherwise it's going to break these ears off. And then this is where one of the number 8s attached to the bottom of your condenser AC connections right here. So you take that off. This is different than what was on our 2011, so I don't know. Our 2011 did not have a steel washer, and it didn't have that other bolt. It had a bushing like this one here. So this was actually really hard to pull off. Almost it didn't fit. So we'll see when we put it back together. Again, you want to be careful. This piece breaks easy. We'll clean it up. You can see all kinds of debris. We'll try to clean it up before we put it in there. We didn't have any coolant leaks, so it should be just fine. And then there's a lot of debris on the bottom of the engine that we'll try to scrape up and clean up. So that's it. That's how you remove the radiator without removing your condenser or breaking open your AC system. I don't know what's stuff that collects. McDonald's. Somebody had McDonald's or drove over a McDonald's bag.
Today's sponsor is.
Well, these aren't from our area because they don't have trees, but I know other areas that do. All right, so that's that. Gives us a lot more room. This allows us to get this on there. I know they say you got to remove the air condenser to remove the radiator. It probably would be easier, but you can do it just like we showed. So now we will take our covers off, and then we'll rotate the engine around to where our timing marks are in the safe position, and then we'll get up underneath there, pull the starter, put our locking pin in, then go from there. So what we did was used our inspection mirror and checked the bolt, the crankshaft pulley bolt in the car. Here's the numbers you're looking for. This says 12.9 or 12.9 right here. If it's 12 or anything other than 10, if it was 10, it'd be standard thread, lefty loosey, righty tighty. But since it's anything other than 10, it's 12.9, I believe that is what they say that is. Then it's right, turn it right to loosen and left to tighten. So just, you gotta check that. Okay, so what we did is I rotated the engine over and I made so you can see this timing mark. You want it somewhere in this position. And then you should be able to feel the one down here with your finger. And then on this side, you have your timing mark here and a timing mark right here. You can see up in there. So that gets, I knew that's the general idea. So then I used my inspection mirror here. And I was able to use a light, look on the back of the crankshaft, or I'm sorry, look on the back of the camshafts and identify the markings that tells me the camshaft's in the right 180 degree position. The slit on the back of the camshafts need to be parallel with the crank or the cylinder head. So I will insert a picture of the service manual that shows you what you're looking at back there. It is hard to see, but you're going to look for that, like a cross-hatched area that's identified. You'll see numbers on both ends, but the cross-hatched area should be the section of the camshaft that's down towards the cylinder head. So, okay, so now that we have that set in the right, in a generally close position, what I do is I leave my ratchet in a 24 millimeter socket onto the crank bolt, and then we're going to jack up the car, crawl underneath it, and remove the starter and the crankshaft position sensor. Put in the crankshaft position sensor locking pin first, alignment pin, and to get that to line up, I don't have to get back up and down. While I'm under the car, I'll be able to reach up with my ratchet here and turn it just ever so slightly to get it to where it's lined up perfect. Then I'll put in my starter lock. So that's what we're going to do now. Once we get that equipment on there, we'll be able to put our special tools to pull this pulley off and then bolt. Okay, so we got our alignment pin where the crankshaft position sensor goes. We got our starter removed and pulled off to the side. We got our locking pin, or the locking assembly, bolted into that. Made sure it was engaged using a mirror, engaged into the flywheel teeth. We got our holding tool bolted up here. We removed 2 bolts from our dampener pulley, and we tighten this down into it. We got it braced with a jack stand down here. And then we got our socket, heavy duty 3/4 inch drive socket inserted on there. We got our 3/4 inch breaker bar. And again, this is, we're going to turn it clockwise to loosen it. So we're going to put our cheater pipe onto that. Reposition. Okay, we'll finish taking it out, put away our cheater bar. Okay, so we went ahead and removed the jack stand from underneath it, loosened off these bolts. I just want to point out, my socket doesn't, it's tight onto this nut. But when you're taking this off, this is still bolted up. You won't be able to pull this out until you take this out, because the flange, the washer is bigger than the puller. So once you got it loosened off and it feels good, then you take this off, then you'll be able to pull it apart like that. I got to put it in a vise and separate that. So, all right, that's it. Next thing we'll work on is pulling the pulley off the dampener. Okay, so we got our dampener pulley set up. There's a bearing, there's 2 sets of bearings. When I take this apart, we'll show you how it all goes together. So what we'll do, we got 4 bolts holding it into the dampener. This threads into where your pulley bolt goes in, and then we'll just
turn it off. We'll use a number 10 wrench to hold this center shaft. It shouldn't turn, but all right, so we unthreaded it, and now it should come off as one piece without damaging the radiator or the condenser. And there you go. You can see how we got our bearings in there. We will take this apart. We're not going to do anything with the water pump. It's not leaking. There's no signs of leaks. It looks like somebody's already replaced it once. So what we're going to do, if we were replacing the water pump, we'd be able to pull this cover off with no problem. Because we're not, we need to pull this vacuum pump off, which is leaking anyway, so we'll probably change it out. But we pull this vacuum pump off, and that'll allow us to pull the bottom of the cover off and then pull it down, and it'll clear this water pump. So what we're going to do now is remove this, let it drain oil out, and then remove all of our cover bolts. We'll probably start with the top, and then we'll do the bottom and here. So, and if you remember in one of the videos, we were doing an inspection on it. We pulled the oil cap and we checked the tension. You can tell this chain isn't real loose. I mean, we'll compare it to the new one, but it feels pretty good still. You can't do, that only checks one side. Now you can see where our problem is. Look at that. So you would never know. So you could do an inspection on a vehicle, and this one could be tight, but that one isn't. And you're going to have timing issues. So really, the best bet to do is, if there's no record of the timing being done on it, consider it's going to need timing. So budget it for that. You can see there's slack in this chain down here by the sprocket, the crank. You shouldn't have that. So yeah, we are going to pull the tensioners off, see what kind of wears on that, pull the chains out, and then we got to set the camshafts, and we'll show you how to do that. All right, we'll pull the tensioners first. That's just your T30, Torx 30. Pull those off, then we pull the adjustment guide and then the other guide. You'll end up doing the passenger side first because that chain has to come off before you can pull the driver's side. I don't think yours had this little flapper bapper. Okay, so before we start taking apart the timing stuff, we want to put our camshaft locks in the back. So that keeps the camshafts from spinning. You just finger tighten those up. I got it on the driver's side as well. Slides in there. Actually, looking through the camera, it looks like that's cockeyed. So I'll get that straightened up a little better, and we'll get it in there. It's probably this wiring harness pushing on it. But you want to put those on there that holds it in place when you break these bolts loose. But there's another step where we'll tighten them up even more. So we'll get to that here in a minute. All right, so I got all the timing components off on the passenger side. I'll just show you. No damage, so that's good. We don't have to worry about chunks of plastic in there. That's good. It doesn't have the updated, so you can see it does not have the updated tensioner guides, so you can see how it's worn down into that. There's your tensioner. And then what I noticed when I pulled off the variators, this is the exhaust variator, it came out clean. This one, see if it comes out. Look at the sludge on that. And that came out of this hole. You can see it. Look, it doesn't even drop in. Just kind of a magoo. So, surprisingly, thought it, it didn't look like it had tarnish, so I figured good oil changes, but it does have sludging. So, we're going to have to pull this variator apart probably and clean it and get all that sludge out of there. But that was the bank that was given the correlation error, so we'll go with that. Figure that out. You don't want to drop these. You don't want to bang on them. The manual says if they get dropped or knocked, that you have to replace them. So we're just going to clean it really good. Clean this one. We'll clean all of them. But we got all our, this is for passenger side intake exhaust. So the chains almost look like they've been replaced because they have the new markings. I don't think the factory chain has the markings, but maybe I'm wrong.
The 2011 we pulled apart didn't have the markings on there. So, all right, we'll go ahead and pull the driver's side off and see how those variators look. All right, I lost the audio on this part of the video, but as you can see, I got the driver's side variators and timing components removed. Fortunately, there was no sludging on those, no signs of sludging like we had on the passenger side intake. So I got both intakes on the top there, exhaust on the bottom. No damage other than just the typical wear you see on these original timing guides. So that's why we're going to do the upgrade, or update I should say. But that's probably going to be it for this video. I know it's long. I tried to be a little bit more detailed on this one. And so the next one will show how we cleaned everything up and get it back together. But thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.